Okay, let's dive straight into Judges chapter 2 today.
Right. We're picking up just after Joshua, after that whole generation who saw, the Lord's amazing work.
Yeah, they're gone now. And things seem to take a turn pretty quickly, don't they?
They really do. The chapter opens right away with this encounter at a place called Bokim.
Bokim. That means weepers, right? Sets a bit of a tone.
It absolutely does. And it's the angel of the Lord who shows up.
Not just any messenger. And what's the message? It sounds pretty direct.
Oh, it is. It's a confrontation, really. The angel basically says, look, I kept my promise. I brought you out of Egypt, led you to this land I swore to your ancestors.
God held up his end of the covenant.
Exactly. I said I would never break my covenant with you. That's the divine side.
But there's always a but in these situations, it seems.
There is here. The angel follows immediately with, but you have disobeyed me. Why?
And the specific failure, what did they do wrong?
It was clear. They were told to tear down the altars of the people already living in the land.
And they didn't.
They didn't. Even worse, they actually made covenants, agreements with those people, a direct violation.
So not just ignoring the problem, but actively engaging with what they were supposed to avoid?
Precisely. And the consequences laid out immediately.
Okay, what was it?
Because you disobeyed, the angel says, I will not drive these nations out before you.
So the people they failed to deal with get to stay.
Yes, and they'll become, the text says, thorns in your sides.
Ouch. That sounds painful.
And they're gods, a snare to you, constant trouble, constant temptation, right there among them.
Wow, that's a heavy consequence. How did the Israelites take this news, right there at Bokim?
Well, the name Weepers gives it away. They lifted up their voices and wept loudly.
A strong reaction, then.
Seems genuine. They even offered sacrifices there, a moment of perhaps sorrow or realization.
But did that weeping lead to lasting change? As we read on, it seems not.
That's the critical, tragic turn in the chapter. The generation that wept at Bokim eventually dies off.
And the next one?
A new generation arises who knew neither the Lord nor what he had done for Israel.
They forgot, or were never taught properly. It's a failure of memory, isn't it?
A complete break, it seems. That knowledge, that history, wasn't passed down effectively.
And the result of forgetting the Lord and his actions.
Predictable, sadly. They did evil in the sight of the Lord. They turned to other gods.
Specifically.
The Baals and the Ashtoreths, these were the Canaanite fertility gods, exactly what they were warned against.
Provoking God's anger, the text says.
Yes. And that anger wasn't just, passive disapproval. It had real consequences.
Like what?
He handed them over to raiders, sold them to their enemies. They couldn't stand against them anymore.
So disobedience led directly to suffering and oppression.
A clear pattern.
Yeah.
Great distress. The Lord's hand was against them, just as he'd warned.
Okay, so this cycle starts. Forgetting, disobedience, suffering. Where do the judges fit in?
Well, in his compassion, when the people cried out because of the oppression, the Lord raised up judges. These were leaders, deliverers, who would save them from their enemies. The Lord would be with the judge.
So temporary relief arrives.
Yeah.
A rescue.
Temporary is the key word, because the people wouldn't even listen consistently to the judges.
Really? Even while being rescued?
They'd prostitute themselves to other gods, turn aside quickly. And here's the really disheartening part.
Go on.
When the judge died, the people wouldn't just go back to their old ways. They'd become even more corrupt than the previous generation.
Worse each time. Wow. So the cycle wasn't just repeating, it was spiraling downward.
Exactly. Forgetting, sin, suffering, rescue by a judge, temporary obedience, judge dies, deeper sin. Over and over.
Stubborn refusal to give up those evil practices, as the text puts it.
Which brings us back to that consequence announced at Bokim, because they kept breaking the covenant.
Right. Not driving out the nations.
The Lord reaffirms it. Because this nation has violated the covenant, I will no longer drive out any of the nations Joshua left.
But this time there's an added reason given, isn't there? Why leave them?
Yes. It wasn't just a consequence anymore. It became a purpose.
Which was?
To test Israel, to see if they would actually keep the way of the Lord like their forefathers were supposed to.
So the nations become a test of faithfulness, a constant reminder of past failures, but also a present challenge.
That's it. The failure to obey fully in the beginning created this ongoing test for all future generations described in Judges.
So looking at this whole chapter, this cycle, forgetting, sin, oppression, crying out, deliverance, then even worse, sin, and this idea of the remaining nations being a test, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it?
About what specifically?
Well, about learning from the past, or maybe our failure to learn, and how critical it is to pass on core truths and history from one generation to the next. What happens when that chain breaks? And what does this concept of a test born from disobedience tell us about facing the consequences of our choices, perhaps choices made long ago?
Hmm. Definitely a lot to reflect on there for all of us.